The glaciers and ice fields of northern Alberta are like a water fountain for the continent, but climate change is disrupting that in a region that's no stranger to devastating drought.
Now, the next time it comes around, we've got this much larger population base, much more water demand. On top of that, we have less glacier ice in the mountains than we used to have to provide that buffer. And so it's going to be more severe than anything we've seen.
Last night, we showed you Cape Town, South Africa, on the brink of depleting its freshwater supply. Tonight, our special coverage of this global threat gets a lot closer to home. Aaron Collins examines the dangers of the prairies running dry.
The snow builds up and the soil moisture changes.
Finding snow in the Rockies isn't hard this time of year. It's pretty much everywhere.
So this rain gauge I'm going to clear just because we've been getting rain events even in the winter here now.
But measuring just how much snow has fallen, well, that's a bit harder. It's a question this team of scientists has been digging into for almost 5 years.
Did I get an honorary PhD for this or something?
You will.
Do I?
Sign it off this afternoon.
And uncovering that answer matters to more people than you might think. That's because the amount of snow that falls here determines how much water millions of people across North America wind up with each summer.
It's an incredible range, and the waters from this mountain range flow into the Arctic Ocean, the Pacific, and the Atlantic.
So what happens here matters for
the whole continent.
Last year, a record snowfall was recorded here, but all that snow wasn't enough to prevent a drought on Canada's prairies. Climate change means this snowpack is melting faster and earlier, leaving the people who rely on it downstream parched by the end of summer.
So people think with all this snow, they're maybe protected from drought. Is that the case?
You know, the snow helps, but in a severe drought, it's not enough. And we need rain as well. And this was proven last year in Canada.
So what we're seeing in Cape Town this year, could that happen here?
That kind of extreme water shortage hasn't happened here, but it's not impossible that it can under an exceptionally severe drought condition.
That's scary news as parts of the southern prairies brace for what could be their second drought year in a row. In the past, melt from glaciers would have helped make up for shortages that arose during dry years, but climate change means that bank of extra water has mostly been spent, and the balance is shrinking fast.
The estimates right now are about 80% of the ice will be gone by 2100.
Now, scientists are keeping a close watch on those receding glaciers even as the population grows and the climate warms on Canada's prairies. You add it all up, and water shortages are likely when, not if, a major drought hits Western Canada.
It might have started last year. We had the beginnings of a drought last year, and it's a question of if we get a few more summers in a row like that.
Back in the Rockies amidst all that snow, it's hard to believe that this part of the world actually gets less precipitation than Cape Town. All the more reason to start preparing for future water shortages now.
The notion that it can't happen here is one of those things that it may be one of the most important myths to break.
I think so. The Cape Town's a terrible event for that city and for Africa, but it can be a wake-up call for the rest of the developed world that we can have severe water shortages.
Until then, researchers here will keep watching and measuring the snow, waiting for the inevitable, the day when no matter how much it snows here, it won't be enough. Aaron Collins, CBC News in Kananaskis country.
And our CBC meteorologist, Johanna Wagstaff, joins me now. Johanna, we just heard about water concerns on the prairies. You've obviously been following the situation in Vancouver for a while now, although it's strange to even think of it as a situation. Anyone who has lived there or been there just immediately associates the place with water. So what is the problem?
It's true, Adrian. People, I think, are surprised to know that despite being surrounded by water and being known for a lot of rain, Vancouver actually has reason to worry as well. So like the prairies in BC, we too rely on the mountain snow for our drinking water. Let me give you some background. In Canada, every community gets their water from their own local watershed, which is basically a naturally occurring basin that collects incoming water in the form of snow or rain. There are 595 of them across Canada. And here in Vancouver, we have 3 very large watersheds which start up in our coastal mountains. All the snow and water ends up in large reservoirs and dams that are built to collect it. They provide clean drinking water to the 2.5 million residents who live in the Metro Vancouver area. But the effects of climate change mean we're getting less mountain snow. The snowpack is expected to drop 25% by 2050 in parts of the province. Instead, BC is starting to see more extreme rainfall events in our winter months. So we're getting our drinking water coming down all at once, rather than a slow and steady melt of that mountain snow. Not only is that a trend that's expected to get worse, it's a lot harder to capture that volume of water. At the same time, drought conditions are becoming more common in our summers. Add to that a growing population and more demand from industry. And in the last few summers, Vancouver residents have had to start conserving water.
Okay, so conservation is always smart, but is anything else being proposed?
Well, the good news is that there are a number of different solutions out there. Take a look at this. To get an idea of what might work, we flew over one of Vancouver's watersheds with the team that monitors the snow levels and the changes we've already been seeing. One solution has to do with infrastructure. The reservoirs and dams that currently store and control all of our trickle-down water could be updated by building more dams or making the reservoirs bigger and deeper to allow us to store more of that rainfall that's coming quickly instead of the slow melt snow. And right now, the outflow valves aren't positioned at the very bottom of the reservoirs. If we made them lower, we could have access to all that water in the reservoirs during very dry years. Until now, the reservoirs have only dipped to just below half, but that's still concerning. The downside, of course, is that replacing aging infrastructure costs a lot of money, and there are concerns it could have an impact on ecosystems and wildlife. Adrian, in the end, what it will really come down to is better water conservation from everyone in BC and beyond. Our water resources may be the envy of the world, but we are the second biggest water users per capita after the Americans. Experts say our restrictions are not strong enough. So it could mean in the future we have to change the way we think about water, and we may find ourselves using a lot less of it.
Okay, Johanna, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
We always try to look for solutions when pointing out problems. So tomorrow, Margaret Evans takes you back to Cape Town, where a resourceful woman is already setting up for the worst.
You've got our main water tank, 1,000 litre. It's full. It feels such a good feeling. Yeah. You can feel the water's cool.
The water she collects washes clothes and dishes, and her soap is probiotic, so she can use leftover water on the plants in the garden. Her story tomorrow on The National.